Hello and welcome to the last of our directors panels. This one is Punching Up and comedy and filmmaking. My name is Greg. I'm one of the programmers here at the festival. Just a little bit of housekeeping right now. I would like to thank our major partners, Telefilm, ACOA, the Government of Nova Scotia, and the City of Halifax. And a big thanks to Cineplex Theaters, because they are the people that allow us to be here. And also our major sponsors, RBC Emerging Artists and Warner Brothers Discovery Access Canada. I am not going to talk anymore, and I'm just going to pass it on to Steph, and enjoy the panel.
Thank you. Thanks for being here today. Thank you, everybody. Yes, my name is Stephanie Joline. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a filmmaker. I reside here in what's known today as Halifax, Nova Scotia. I do want to say that we're on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. I'm an Indigenous person myself, actually, but I'm not Mi'kmaq, so I want to thank the Mi'kmaq people for allowing us to be here today, and we honor and respect the ongoing relationship between nations. Our panel today is called Punching Up, Comedy and Filmmaking. So we have a great panel of wonderful, hilarious people and filmmakers, and their films are all playing here at the festival. You can still see all of them. 2 in person, 1 is still streaming. I will let everybody introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about the film that you have playing here. Can we start with you?
Hi, I'm Chandler Levack. I'm here from Toronto. My film is called I Like Movies, which is a pretty non-controversial statement at a film festival. It's about a very pretentious teenage boy who's a cinephile who gets a job at a video store in his last year of high school to save money because he wants to go to NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, but he's deluded. And he forms a very complicated friendship with his older female manager at the store who used to work in the film industry. And it had its world premiere at TIFF about a week ago. And I'm very happy to be at the Atlantic Film Festival. It's my first time in Halifax, so thanks for having me.
First time? Wow, that's cool. Hi, my name's Thorne. I have a short film called The Burn Book Tour, and it was in Atlantic Shorts 2, which you can still stream. And it's about a sister stand-up comedy duo who has decided to break up, but they end up breaking up on stage.
My name's Kevin Hartford. I have a feature called Lemon Squeezy, which is about a teenage boy who thinks he's caused some biblical plagues to happen, as all teenage boys do. And then I had a short called Fizzy, directed by the wonderful Kumbi, that I wrote, edited, and did the sound for, which is why the sound is so bad. And yes, this is my first feature, and I'm happy to be here.
That's a great segue for me. Speaking of sound, my first question was about sound. I want to ask all of you about the role sound plays in your film, but Kevin, I will start with you. Sound seems to be quite a big element, sound, voiceover, sound effects, of your film, Lemon Squeezy. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I love the idea of people responding to something that no one else can see. There was a sketch on Saturday Night Live where Drew Barrymore worked at a TV station and they couldn't afford to put on the movies of the week anymore, so they just had the newscasters look out the window and describe Godzilla and what he was doing. And so I've kind of strive to make that same arc in every short that I've made. For Squeezy in particular, it was because we kind of didn't have the budget to find a church to film inside or a bar that would agree to let us film in it. So we kind of positioned the camera outside these spaces, and then you'd hear what's going on inside. And a lot of the voiceover is, well, all of the voiceover is by God, because narrators are a great way to cover all the holes in the plot. And who is more omniscient than God? But also I made God into a total jerk because it just kind of feels like that's what he would be like in real life. So yeah, it's just my own weird love of off-camera shenanigans plus what worked the best for us budget-wise.
You just mentioned SNL. Man, you guys are setting me up so perfectly. Chandler, you have there's one of my favorite scenes of your movie is actually your 2 teenage boys that are watching SNL, and it takes place in the 90s. I don't 90s? What year?
Early 2000s.
Early 2000s.
2003.
Okay. I don't think it like said that, or if it did, I missed it because I was like trying to figure out what year it was based on what they were talking about on SNL. Like they were talking about the Hanukkah song that Adam Sandler was doing, and I really liked that scene because you never showed the TV screen. It was just played in dialogue of what they were watching. Was that done intentionally? Like, was a creative choice made because were there limitations with clearances and stuff? Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, of course. So they have this ritual in the film. It's called Rejects Night, where the lead character and his best friend watch SNL every weekend. And the movie opens with a sort of fake movie within the movie where they kind of do this like crib style mockumentary about their weekly routine of Rejects Night. But then later you see them watching SNL with Lawrence's mom. And we couldn't afford to show Adam Sandler performing the Hanukkah song on SNL, which he did in November 2002. So I had to write a fake Hanukkah song that was like a sound-alike that could kind of stand in. And then my brother did an Adam Sandler impersonation. And then we recorded an ADR, and then I mixed it in. So there was this very stressful week where I had to like write all these lyrics, and I was like sitting in my apartment being like, what rhymes with Alan Alda? Oi Gevalta, that's what I picked. Yeah, so, and then, there's a couple of like things like that, like he watches Full Metal Jacket and Spartacus. So I had to write dialogue that could sound like it could be in Full Metal Jacket, could sound like it would be in Spartacus, and then I got my friends who were actors to act it out, and then I did sort of sound design to like make it feel like it was in the movie, because anytime if we showed clips from those films, it'd be like $50,000, minimum. So it's just kind of like, some of the creative licenses you have to do with like low budget feature filmmaking.
That's really cool. I did notice that one of your characters is wearing a Nirvana shirt, and it made me so jealous because I was like, oh, I really wanted to clear a Nirvana shirt for this movie I did a couple of years ago.
Oh yeah, Night Blooms, which is excellent.
Oh my gosh, thank you. No, but I was just like, she got the Incesticide Nirvana shirt, and I was really excited to see it. So, yeah, talking about low budgets, I mean, I think all of these, if it's safe to say, all of your films are pretty low budget. Tara, do you want to talk a little bit about the kind of parameters of the low budget that you had to work in and how that helped you sort of be creative in different ways?
My most hated question is, what's your budget? Because not from you, but like when you're hiring someone, what's your budget? Well, as close to zero as it can be. So this short was not funded. It was I wrote a book, not to be like this, but I wrote a book and I got the other half of the advance. And this should tell you how much writing a book gets you in Canada.
Not to be like this, as in
Not to be like, I wrote my book. I did. At October 18th. But I got the other half of the advance, and I got this idea. The Omicron window had closed. And I was like, oh no, I'm just going to be sitting here all winter getting rejected by film festivals for the feature, which is what happened. And so I need to work on something. And two of the actors from my feature that screened on Saturday, Kat and Hillary, they had made this joke that was like, what if we played sisters? And I was like, I don't know. Like, it's a passing resemblance, but it's not uncanny. And then when the Omicron window closed, I was like, yes, you're going to play sisters. Where are you going to do it? One location. We'll figure it out. So, yeah, I just had this tiny, it was 4 figures, but, like, barely. And I just sort of, I had just worked on this movie, so I felt like I built up enough goodwill to be like, hi, I know this isn't your day rate, but would you all come work? I paid everyone $150 each, like, just flat across the board. We had a team of 7, and Kevin came in. He was not paid $150. He was moral support. You can't call in too many of those favors. And so really all the limitations were kind of, it wasn't limiting because I knew I kind of was set going in. So it was like the biggest cost was renting the bus stop because I wasn't a member, so that was $400. And then we fed everyone and gave them a little bit of money.
But it kind of forces you to be creative too, right? When you have your characters performing.
Yeah.
And there's no audience, I don't think, but you hear
There
an
wasn't.
audience, so that's played in sound. So like you have to be you have to write around your low budget sort of.
Yeah. So we shot it in the bus stop with no one laughing. And then I am Halifax's #1 fan of Hello City, the improv troupe. So I said, I emailed them and said, can I come to your next show and just put a mic on the ground and like record laughter? And they're like, yeah, of course. So I did that. And just as the lights went down, my friend who came with me said, what if someone has a fucked up laugh? And there was a guy who was laughing like a goose the whole time. So
And what, were they like really close to the mic? So
Across
it's all
the
you
aisle.
heard? Oh.
So, yeah, we had to work around that. But that's like, if that's the biggest challenge, that's not too bad.
Yeah, that's not too bad. But Tara, I'm gonna keep with you for a second because you just mentioned you have a feature playing at this festival as well. That one is not considered a comedy, I wouldn't
No.
say. But you have this short comedy. So do you like switching genres? Like, do you feel like that's a benefit to you as a filmmaker?
I kind of prefer dramedy, if not to be difficult, but like there were parts in COMPULSUS which on Saturday where I was surprised people laughed. We were talking about that. All of the actors that are in it are very funny, and because of that, I wrote an ensemble comedy for all of them, which is the next movie. But this one, the Burn Book Tour, is funny, and then it's sad at the end, because like all comedy is deeply rooted in sadness. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's funny because I think it's easier to make a drama. Like, comedies are dramas. They just have jokes in them. You know, they still have to have all the kind of same, like, human stakes and, you know, plot development and characters going through something. So I think it's, I don't know, it kind of bothers me that people don't take comedy as seriously as dramas or don't consider it as much of kind of an evolved art form because it's actually so much harder to do.
Yeah, to make people care about the people, for sure. Yeah. And I mean, Judd Apatow, people give him shit, and rightfully, because he'll be like, dick joke, and then it's like, but the boys are sad about how their relationship is going to be different, you know? And you're like, you just cram that in. Like, you need to work it in all the way.
Oh, it's like he started with the joke
Yeah.
and crammed in the story
Yeah,
rather than
but he
vice
always
versa.
crams in some heart at the end.
You know, we're on film. Judd Apatow could be watching this.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it. Judd Apatow once retweeted
he
a
retweeted
podcast
you
of mine, and we got 0 extra listens. So I'm not worried about. I don't.
Sorry, Judd
Judd's
Apatow.
influence is not in my sphere.
I love you, Judd Apatow. Please work with me.
Not everybody on this panel agrees with Tara's.
I do love Bridesmaids.
Kevin, I want to ask you about your. From what I understand, you shot this film in kind of a unique way.
Yeah, so speaking of non-existent Halifax budgets, Tara was on set for about 4 days doing the slates. Otherwise, it was like the camera assistant was doing the slates. But we also used Tara's apartment for Jessica Barry's home, which is just how it works when you live in Halifax and make film. So I originally had been up for these 2 telefilm grants that I didn't get. And I was like, screw it. I'm just going to make something Clerk style for no money, or maybe more pie and following for no money. And me and Tim, my cinematographer, who you know, had done about, I don't know, 4 or 5 shorts for basically $0 except for lunch. And so I was like, it'll essentially be like doing 9 shorts in a row. No big deal. It'll go great. And I scheduled it to be on the weekends so that nobody would have to take time off work except everybody worked in a bar at a gym. So that didn't work either. And so what should have taken about like 4 or 5 weekends took 6 months. And we filmed a day or 2 a month. And then I remember having to cram shots in at the end because the leaves were falling off the trees. So we started in June and ended in November. And I was like, nothing's going to match.
But your film, it was supposed to take place all in one season, and it wasn't supposed to have season changing.
Yeah, pretty much. And then halfway through filming, we got a Canada Council grant, which was still almost nothing. But I love Canada Council. I'm so happy that I got it.
But still, it's better than something.
It was nice to pay people some money, but it was supposed to like be $3,000 of my own money. So a lot of that was just 2 people in a room talking, because most films are, and then all that weird exterior stuff.
Yeah, so I guess, are there some students or sort of emerging filmmakers here? Couple of them. So I guess just in case
Scooby
people
Doo.
don't know, usually when you do a feature, it could be anywhere between 15 days, 20 days, 25 days if you have a lot of money maybe. But usually that's shot in a row, 5 days a week, and then 2 days off. So this approach is quite unique to do here and there a couple days, like weeks in between probably, and then another couple days. And
Yeah, I was worried, someone would move to another province or die in a horrible
like
accident.
hair changing or
Yeah.
anything like that, you'd have to really consider.
Jessica Barry went from being sort of like coming off winter pale with dark hair to like a glorious tan with like blonde streaks in her hair, and I was just praying nobody would notice. Riley's hair grew like 3 inches and became like, instead of like a strawberry blonde, like a bleach blonde in the sun. So, I just tried to put as much confusing stuff in between that so you wouldn't notice the transition. So no adjacent scenes.
Did you shoot it in chronological order though?
No, we did it kind of according to location.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Would you recommend people take this approach to their next feature?
Now, this is such a boring story. It went so well, aside from the scheduling, that it only had a stumble at the post-production stage, which I won't go into, but Tara has sure heard a lot about it.
Chandler and I are feeling really left out. You guys have all the inside stories about all your movies together.
We can catch up after, I guess. I think regardless of how complicated it gets, I think if you want to make something, you should, and it's the only way to get anything done. And if you don't want to dive into what ended up being 12 days of filming, schedule over half a year, do a short for a day, put 2 people on a couch. It works, and it's the one. I know this is a comedy panel, and this is me trying to be inspiring. But
the inspiring panels, come
the
on.
inspiration panel. But I think you should just dive into something. Why not?
Kevin's way of working informed the Burn Book tour. Well, I also used him on Burkett for that because he'd shot in my house and he was such a sweet boy, and who makes nice pictures. It's really.
You sound like he's like 12 years old.
I know.
Sweet boy.
He's a lot younger than me. So yeah, Kevin has these like chill days that are like dialogue crammed scenes with not a ton of shots and not a ton of fanciness, not to be like derogatory, but like like not complicated, and because it's about characters and it's about, because comedy is so much about the people and the jokes and stuff. So, and yeah, like we shot it, we were done, it was like a 10 to 6, and people are astonished by that.
I want to add, because everyone was originally working for a percentage of the gross profits, which is always 0 for something that costs what this did. Everyone, I was really accommodating to everyone who worked on it, and then when we got that grant halfway through and I could pay people, they never shook that, like, you must. They're all like, I have like a dinner to go to at 5, and I'd be like, of course we'll be done by 5, which is not something that would happen on a bigger budget film set.
Well, despite the fact that you shot it kind of spread out like that, you did a good job maintaining the same tone for the film, which I think is a really hard thing when you're talking about making a feature, spread out or not, maintaining a consistent tone, because you have to keep in mind that you're directing a scene on day 1, and then at the end of your shoot, you're directing another scene, but those scenes will be cut together. So just to keep all of that in your mind as a director, I think is really hard to do. Chandler, do you want to speak to that at all? Because I feel like you did a great job at maintaining quite a consistent tone in your film.
Oh yeah, I was really worried about that because my film, it kind of opens like super bad, and then it takes some really dark turns, and there's like a 7-minute monologue halfway through the film that's sort of a really dramatic moment, and I was afraid, are all these moments going to be earned, and are you going to feel like you're in the same movie all the way through? Because I'm also a film critic. I write for the Globe and Mail, and that's kind of one thing I'm always evaluating when I'm reviewing movies, is sort of like inconsistencies in tone, and are there actors who feel like they're in a completely different movie, and you kind of want to, I think your job as a director is just to make sure that everyone is always in the same movie, even like people that are just coming in for one scene. And so that's definitely a challenge. I guess I don't know how to offer advice on how to do. I feel like I just got lucky, but I think I remember my friend just saying that like so much of it is just about everyone you put into the film. It's like it's kind of like you're about to give birth and everyone on set is like the father of your child. Like you have like 30 different fathers, and all of their DNA is going to be a part of this thing that you're creating.
It's an interesting image. But it's kind of, I kinda
Yeah.
get
Okay.
that, yeah.
Just go with me on this. So I mean, I think it's like, especially with casting, I think that's primarily sort of those are the people that are going to convey the tone of your writing. Those are the people that are sort of, especially the lead actor. They're kind of almost like the author of your film. So you really have to find someone who, connects sort of comedically, has the same essence as your film, really gets what the movie is, and then you just have to kind of keep everybody in it. Because sometimes it's really hard to sort of rein people in, and especially during emotional scenes or dramatic scenes, I still wanted there to be all these little kind of character-based moments. So I tried to just have little like things that I could add. Like I think it's always great if you can have a scene where 3 things are going on. So like there's a kind of dramatic dinner table scene between the mother and the son, but I put my dog in there, so my dog is always like begging for food at the table, and then there's I just think like the more you can sort of add to a scene that's like a physical thing that people can do, that's how you kind of create like comic set pieces or little moments that people remember that are sort of based in reality. So it's not always like just people sitting and filming them against a flat wall.
It's very layered. I guess it probably gives the actors do they call it business?
Yeah.
Like business, and like what the actors are doing.
And
they
a
have
video
something to
store's
hold or something to
a video
do
store is
with their
great
hands.
for that because they're like there's a monologue where like one of the lead actors talks about how her roommate committed suicide in first year university and that's why she dropped out of school, but she's doing that while she's finding like a gordita that's been thrown against like the LGBTQ section of the video store, and she's like, this is a hate crime, we're gonna get ants, so I just like when there's sort of contrasting things. Like I feel like it's kind of like when you try to give a kid vegetables and you like sneak them into a brownie or something. It's like if you can, like, because I hate in movies when it's just like straight up exposition or straight up just like emotional unloading. It's kind of nice when it can be contrasted like real life, where you're busy, checking the mail or a million things are going on.
And you're all the writers of your films as well, so I guess that's something to keep in mind too. I mean, getting information across on screen is, I think, like the hardest thing to do as a writer, because other than someone saying words exactly how they feel and what they're thinking, which is like the easiest thing to write on the page, and then you go, okay, that's boring. How am I gonna? But yeah, I like that approach. Kind of adding layers of different things and making it feel more like real life, and probably the actors probably like it as well. But speaking of the actors, I'd like to ask you a little bit about the casting, because your 2 leads are so, I mean, everyone's really good in your film, but I really like your 2 leads, and they're young guys. I don't know what their age, but they're playing high school students, but I don't know what their real ages are. They seem young.
Yeah. My lead actor, Isaiah Lettinen, he's from Vancouver. He was a TIFF Rising Star this year. And we looked at over 300 actors across Canada. And some really interesting actors auditioned, like the lead actor of The Fabelmans auditioned for my film. I didn't realize that until like this week when I watched The Fabelmans, and I was like, oh yeah, I think he auditioned for Lawrence, and he just didn't do it for me.
You wouldn't have changed anything, though, because your film worked
The
out.
Fablemans, do people know that's the next Spielberg movie? That's young Spielberg, right?
Yeah, young Spielberg. But yeah, Isaiah was one of the last actors who auditioned, and it's a very like prickly kind of difficult role. He's sort of unlikable and kind of a dick for most of the movie, and so it's really hard to find somebody who can kind of convey all of that, but also someone you still want to root for, that is also a great actor and can be vulnerable but really funny, and also kind of complicated and have a rich like inner world. And I was just so lucky to find Isaiah. I think he's like a miracle. And then Percy Hines White, who is actually from Newfoundland. He's in it too, and he's really great too. And he originally auditioned for Lawrence, so the lead actor role. So, it's kind of, if you find an actor and you love them, but they're not quite right, like maybe a good thing is to consider them for other parts, or see, sometimes just there's an organic chemistry, and, you can like always rewrite a part to a student actor as well.
So you didn't have anyone specifically in mind as you were writing?
This film?
Yeah, like you had a casting call and then you just saw.
I
people
originally
come in?
wrote the film, like the whole reason I wanted to write this film is because Telefilm has this grant called Talent to Watch, which is $125,000 for your first feature. And I was trying to get this other feature off the ground for like 5 years, and it just wasn't happening for me. And I was like, you know, turning 31, and I was like, I need to make a movie or I'm going to die. And I'll never I'll be waiting to make this movie forever if I just keep, like, nothing's happening. So I was like, okay, think of a film that you could make for $125,000. And I had a friend who I'd worked with when he was like really young, who was 16-year-old boy, who is now famous actor. And so he was the only person I could think of if I was like, if at least if I send him a script, he'll read it. Maybe he won't do it, but he'll at least read it. So I was like, think of something you could do for $125,000. It could take place in one location, mostly for a 16-year-old boy. And that's kind of how I decided to write the script.
Oh.
Was it Timothy Chalamet?
No.
Was it Spider-Man?
No.
Was it Evan Peters? We're gonna find out later.
No, that's really cool. Tara, I think when you were writing Burn Book Tour, did you have people in mind when you were? You said.
Oh,
that
yeah,
you,
it was-
that you had them in mind for playing sisters. So do you want to talk a little bit about the casting?
Yeah, so it was specifically for Kat and Hillary, who are both in Compulsus. Kat in a very funny part, Hillary in a very not funny part. I don't wake up with the drive to make short films. Like, I need a reason to do it. And my general work process is talent-based. It's like I want to work with people, so we do a thing. And that's what this was. It was just sort of like they made a joke, and I was like, why don't we do it? And they were like, okay. So, you know, it's really nice to write with people in mind. It's like the #1 screenwriting rule. It's like, don't think of a famous person when you're writing because you're never going to get them. But when it's your friend who you can text, you're probably gonna get them. So yeah, I just wrote it because they know each other, and they're very kind and generous and funny actors and people. So you also know that you're gonna have a nice fun day, which you did. And they also, because we'd worked together before, didn't have a problem saying to me like, I don't like this line, or like, what do you think if I add a line? Kat's very huge on improv, so there's like tons of actually really funny bloopers that Kevin got to witness some of them. Like, we had to cut me laughing out of the movie. So yeah, it's a real joy, and that's how I've written everything now. Like, I'm working on a feature of Burn Book now, because I'm just like, why not give them a whole movie?
I was going to ask you all about ad-libbing and kind of improvising on set. Kevin, do you want to talk about casting and whether or not that was something like improv? Was that part of your film?
I will answer this, but I have 2 points I want to make because I always feel so rude jumping in. Chandler, I am auditioning for my next film, which has a budget of about 10 times what this one had. And someone from The Handmaid's Tale auditioned for it. I was like, I can't believe she's reading my words. And then the other point was I avoid the whole like having to figure out tone by just having everyone be completely emotionally flat for the whole film.
Wes Anderson style.
And their only emotions are varying degrees of annoyance or frustration. So it's
That's a good one.
Yeah, it's an easy way to maintain kind of that level.
You can jump into it, and you don't have to save it for the end until I call on you.
He's a good ally.
We're just
So I had worked with almost everyone in my film before on shorts or in fringe shows, or I had done something with them, so I kind of knew what everybody's talent level was, and I wrote for every single person in the film specifically, and there's about 20 speaking characters. And there were only a couple, I would say, people that I hadn't worked with before and had never acted before, including the mom. So I made her someone who was into anti-jokes, and so she's just reading her like test material throughout the whole film so she wouldn't have to memorize anything. So yeah, that's why she delivers those 3 like
that's a clever
5-minute jokes with no punchlines, is because I needed someone to play a mom, but I didn't want to like ask Shan McDonald if she would come in and read. Yeah, so
Who's Shan McDonald? Sorry.
this is another inside. the best part of this is excluding the person from Toronto.
Yeah, I like
That we never get to do that.
It's that East Coast resentment coming out. Shan was in our friend Heather's film Murmur, which played at
Oh
TIFF,
yeah, of
and
course. I love Murmur so much, and Heather Young's a genius,
Yeah.
and she's so good in that movie.
Yeah.
See, I know cool Halifax stuff.
Yeah. So I was just like, I don't
You
want.
didn't want to ask her to be in the movie because
I've
she was
had-
already in Heather's movie, and you don't want to like steal her. From
Okay,
Heather's
I know
movie.
that sounds insane. I had 2 filmmaker friends who I was like, "What would you say about so and so being in my film?" And they got weird about it, and I was like,
The
okay.
real Halifax tea coming out.
I was just like, "That's fine." And then I don't know. I was
The pool of actors is small here within the unions. So
Yeah.
when you're looking, because your film was non-union, so then
Yeah.
you start looking at non-union actors, and there's not a lot. So I feel like we should all be sharing it. Everybody.
But
should
people
I
want to
agree.
be
They
the
want.
people want to be the discoverer though,
But
and then
these-
they own them.
Yeah. It was just like one incident happened, and I was like, well, that was kind of strange. And then another one happened right after, and I was like, well, I might go with the person that's most accessible to me, which would have been Kelly, who played the mom. I'm not that I'm a coward. I'm very bold, and I make lots of great decisions in the moment. This was just a weird area I'd never encountered before.
Right. And then as far as like improv and stuff, did you let the
The
actors-
actual question you asked. No, I don't think anyone. There was none.
I never witnessed any.
No,
they
you
were
do what
just-
I
they were
say.
reading, yeah.
You say what I wrote.
I love improv. All of my favorite scenes in Compulsus are the ones that were ad-libbed, and that's not me being like, I'm terrible. It's just like whenever there's space for like magic to come in and they create it themselves, it's just more rewarding to me as like someone who's watching everything, to the point where the next film is structured in a way that there's going to be room for improv. It's going to be a terrible film to be a script supervisor on.
Sometimes I wonder though, is the thing they improvised more exciting to our ear as the director because it's just the thing we're not used to? We just heard 6 takes exactly the same way. So the 7th one is like, oh, that's funny. Is it really funnier, or it's just because we just get used to the other way? I don't know.
But I find when you. Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah, I think it can be easy, like to sort of fall in love with that on set, and then you watch the footage later, and you're like, oh, this isn't. We were like dying laughing, but I don't know. I think mine's very scripted, but the lead actor took a lot of creative liberties, and his voice was like even more specific. Like he could almost speak better as the character than I wrote him sometimes. So, yeah. So it was interesting going back because I had to go back to my script to do the subtitling, and I was like, wow, there's so much ad-libbing, but just from him. Everyone else is like very strictly scripted. And it's very like the dialogue. There's a lot of like likes and ums like written into the scripts, which I like kind of doing.
Because it sounds like
More natural,
Yeah.
like how people actually speak. But yeah, I mean, I think improv can be great if there's room and time for it. I think there can sometimes be that syndrome of just like you add so much improv that it's kind of indulgent, and it just feels like you're not like the best thing that somebody told me to do was just like watch every scene in the movie and cut stuff. Just cut stuff from every scene. Like try to make your film as like streamlined as you can in the edit. Like take out stuff that isn't there and that doesn't need to be there. And once I kind of started doing that, I was actually kind of liberating because I killed a lot of darlings, and I think the film got better as a result of that, and like only the strongest jokes survived. I also really recommend adding additional jokes with ADR. Because you can always add extra jokes if there's like long pauses. You know, people can say jokes off camera. People can say jokes as they're leaving, a scene. And there's just so much more possibility for jokes than you even... And some of the biggest laughs in the film are now stuff that I added, after the fact in ADR, too.
yeah, that's a cool idea.
Hey, quiet.
Rude.
I'm doing what you said. I write stuff very specifically to have a certain rhythm, and I feel like I can always tell what the improvised lines are when I watch a movie, and because I try to do this kind of like writing to a beat. When people do something different, it kind of like really sticks out. So you can probably attest to what my dialogue sounds like.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not that I like need to control every single thing that happens. It's just if you're going for something super specific and somebody like Ian McLeod, filmmaker, he did a lot of improv and all of it. I was like, this is fine, but we can't use any of it. But yeah,
It's nice to have those options in editing
yeah,
and just like see what works and what doesn't work.
Sometimes the best moments are just the like look on somebody's face too. Like, you know, if you have really great actors, like sometimes you just being with them in a moment. Like I love seeing moments of just people where they're like alone in their house or something, and or like long pauses between people sitting in silence. Like that can also be really funny too.
And how important is editing with like, I guess timing in the edit and also timing of the delivery of the lines from the actors. How important is timing specifically to comedy? Sarah, what about you?
Oh God, it's very important, and I edited mine. It's the first time I've ever done it, so I don't know that I know yet. I just know that the editing is very specifically important because you've gotta move the perspective on the right time. So Kevin edited his, but he has a lot more experience
You
than I
both
do.
like physically were the editors of those.
Yeah.
films. And Chandler, did you have an editor?
Yeah, I worked
with.
with a brilliant editor named Simone Smith, who's a genius, and yeah, I mean, she really like, you know, our assembly didn't really change that much. We just kind of cut a lot of scenes. Like the original cut of the movie was 2 hours and 15 minutes, and now it's an hour and 39 minutes with credits. So
Is this an editor that specifically works in comedy or?
she kind
all
of does
genres?
both. Like she edited Firecrackers, Never Steady, Never Still, but she also does comedy. She's editing an Amazon show right now called The Lake, and another show on CBC called Strays. But yeah, she's very, very funny, and yeah, I think her sense of comic timing and rhythm, like you were saying, and you know, there's like a big montage in the movie, and then you know, there's these two films within the film, and then I was really inspired sort of by like the way that I came of age making movies, which was like iMovie 2. So I wanted to have that kind of like 2003 like aesthetic. So sometimes there's these like weird iMovie transitions that would only, you know, you'd only see in like your high school films. And I went back to a lot of my old like mini DV high school movies that I made in high school, which were so embarrassing, and tried to kind of ape that aesthetic because I feel so nostalgic for that, and it's not something I really see evoked in like the current cinema. So yeah, there's a lot of Ken Burns stills effects and stuff like that. Yeah.
Further to what Chandler was saying about the moments of just stillness and like reactions and stuff, I have such wall-to-wall dialogue that I love having like a minute where nothing happens. So one of my favorite scenes in my film is when a young woman named Lauren Dial is just shooting elastics at the ceiling for like a solid minute, inspired by that Twin Peaks The Return scene where the guy just sweeps the floor for 3 minutes straight. Because it gives people a break from having to like concentrate on the words and feel anything. And it's just nice to kind of like catch a character in a still moment.
Yeah, I think one thing I didn't really think about, maybe this is interesting, is like visually how I was going to film the movie. Because my film is also wall-to-wall dialogue, and I kind of, you know, and it takes place in a video store. We're never outside. It's always like fluorescent lighting and like DVD stalking the floor. And I didn't really think about kind of the visual, like cinematic language of the film and how to sort of vary it and shake it up. It's a lot of times just a medium close-up on the lead actor's face, who never stops talking. And so my editor was always like, make sure you think about like transitional scenes, like how you're going to get in and out of the scene visually, how you're going to get out of it. Think about contrasts, like maybe, you know, if you start on a close-up and then you go to a wide, that's kind of like a nice visual distinction, or like interesting insert shots. So she like was like, make sure you shoot interesting insert shots, because then that's at least a cool way to sort of open the scene, so you're not just always like another wide, then you go to the medium shot, then you go to the close-up. That's the scene, like. And so there's a lot of close-ups of food. There's like a pizza and a pizza sub and a Subway restaurant, and you know, but that was helpful for me because I think, you know, because I'm such a writer, I wasn't really thinking like a director until it was like until I got to the shot listing phase.
I do think that's like a comedy thing, though. Like, no one's like, Judd Apatow's cinematographer. You know what I mean? Because it's not about that. It's about, like, let's see the face doing the joke.
Right. Yeah. It is nice that, I mean, that's good advice, I think, to people that are sort of starting out in filmmaking, because it's easy to forget that you do need things in the edit sometimes. Even if you think, oh, this is going to play as a oneer, sometimes in the edit doesn't work, and you're like, we didn't get any cutaways, or we didn't get anything else to do, and then you kind of screw yourself.
And then you can't cut stuff. Like if it's only one shot, then and you realize halfway through, like he doesn't know his lines, or like I could lose a minute of the scene, and because it's slowing down the whole movie, and actually. Like I think the thing about a feature is that what's hard is it's like a whole ecosystem, right? And because it's like a huge, larger canvas than just a short, you have to think about like the way that every scene affects like the whole experience of watching the whole movie, and how an audience is going to sit there for like an hour and a half, 2 hours and watch this thing. So like taking stuff out helps it go. And I remember we trimmed the first act down to 20 minutes, and we cut it down like really a lot, but we left the film the same, and everyone was like, even though we had cut like 10 minutes out of the movie, everyone was like, this movie is so slow now, I can hardly watch it. But I'm like, but it's 10 minutes shorter, and they're like, so it's just like you have to think about, if you do that to the first act, then you have to cut stuff out of the rest of the movie too, and it's like this whole organic thing.
And so when you were going through and you said you cut something from each scene, what was kind of your guiding principle for that? Sorry to take your job, Steph.
No, love it. Go ahead.
I think it was just like there are so many extra details that didn't need to be there. Like there was this job interview scene where he's trying to get a job at the video store, and has this long monologue about how he read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens, and it changed his life, and now he's like determined to be an artist, and in this like bored 35-year-old manager who's like eating chili is like, okay. But like it didn't need to be like a 5-minute scene because it was dragging like the whole, you just want to get him into the video store working there. You don't need to see like a job interview scene for that long. So it's just like I had all these extraneous things, or because it was so closely mirrored to my own life, like stuff that I was like, well, that's what happened at the time, so I have to keep that in. But it's like, no, the audience is smart enough, they'll just figure it out themselves, or they don't need like 4 extra details about the backstory of this. Or
But was there anything extra? Because I love that like one key weird thing that seems to belong to nothing. Was there anything you were like, oh, I got to keep this in, this one odd bit?
I think the whole movie is full of odd bits, so yeah.
Excellent.
Do you have anything else to add? Or?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Specifically, I think with comedy, the audience, who you're making it for, is so specific, because not everyone's going to think the same thing's funny. So this question's going to go for everybody, but Kevin, I'll start with you. Who were you thinking of the audience being when you were making this?
I have a very specific sense of humor, which is like super deadpan, absurdist, Wet Hot American Summer style, like no emotion, ridiculous things happening. Like for some reason I find that's the funniest thing in the world. So my audience is always me, which I'm sure will be a popular answer on this panel. And but enough people over the years have found my stuff either weird enough or funny enough to like that I'm like, okay, there will be some people who appreciate this. As Tara once said, the people who are not into it will really not be into it, and the people who are into it will be really into it. And I was like, great, but there's like kind of no in between. Just because the tone is very, very specific. So, me.
And sorry, Tara, before we move on from Kevin, I was just going to ask, you have shown your film, you haven't shown it here yet at this festival. You did show it at one other film festival.
I showed it at AIFF in Austin, Texas last month, which was used to be the Austin Gay and Lesbian International Film Festival. Now it's the All Genders, Lifestyles, and Identities Film Fest. It's been running for 35 years. It was really great because Austin's motto is Keep Austin Weird, and everyone at this film fest was super weird. And so when they watched my movie, it was like a rapturous response, and I was like, this is...
Were you there, and were you watching it in the theater, or did you leave and come back?
I was in the theater, but I was like this because I didn't want to see no one's face, and I didn't want them to see mine. And then I didn't want to, like, if people were, like, pretending to gag or something. I don't know. But I could hear everyone laugh, and by the end of it, I was, like, so great. I don't know. It was one of the best experiences of my life.
Oh, that's so great to hear. That's awesome. Did people come up to you after and be like, your film was great?
It was one of the only 2 good experiences of my life.
It went from a great statement to a very sad
A real
statement.
tragedy. Yeah, people were great after. But the guy that programmed the festival, his name's Todd, he was like, yeah, so I got your screener and I was like, had a super bad cold. So I was like really high on cold medication and it really landed with me. And I was like, great, I'll take what I can get.
So that's your demographic.
Yeah.
People that are high
I'm
on
going to
cold
take a bunch of
medication.
Benadryl.
Yes. So just get messed up.
And Tara, what about you? When you wrote this short, what audience were you thinking in mind?
I wasn't thinking of one. If you asked me that about Compulsus, I'd be like, anyone but men. It's about a lesbian vigilante. But this, I just wanted to like make this movie with and for my friends, and basically the audience, we screened it to them on Saturday afternoon. It was like everyone they knew, like just a local audience, and we had fun. Yeah, so like there's no big like festival strategy for Burn Book Tour. It's just like we'll make it, we'll see what happens.
But people liked it. It was a warm crowd. I mean,
Yeah.
it's nice to have a hometown.
Yeah,
crowd
it
where
closed
your
the
friends are
program,
there.
which no one
Yeah.
told me was happening. So the whole time I was just like getting more and more stressed and sitting next to Kat, and who was like, "Can you fuck off?" As the person in the movie, she's like, "You don't have anything to worry about."
Oh my gosh, that's funny. But I guess you don't know if you're playing other festivals. Well, you can still stream it. So
Yeah,
anyone
you
here
can
who
stream
wants
it.
to see it can still
Yeah,
stream
I'll
it,
send
and
you a
maybe
link.
it'll-
Just email me.
And what about you, Chandler? Were you thinking of a specific demographic? I mean, yours takes place. It's a period piece. Takes place early 2000s. So, were you thinking about people your age who sort of were teenagers in the early 2000s?
I think for me, it was like I'd never made any piece of art that actually reflected my own sensibilities before, because I'd been a critic for so long and really repressing my artistic identity and like need to make a film. I directed a lot of music videos and I'd made a short film, but it was kind of based on a book, and it was sort of kind of more of the producer wanted me to direct it, and I kind of like found my way into that project, but it was a drama, so this was my first time being like, and I've always wanted to make kind of like a comedy coming of age movie, like a teen film, like the films that I all loved, watching in the back room of Blockbuster, like Rushmore and Ghost World. And when I saw Lady Bird at TIFF, I was like, oh my God, this movie speaks to me so deeply. My lead actor says this film is like Lady Bird for incels.
Well, I know it
Bird
takes
for
place in this.
incels.
Lady Birds also takes place in 2002.
Yeah. We actually shot with the same camera and lenses from Panavision as Lady Bird, which was cool.
Whoa, that's cool.
Yeah. But yeah, I think I was really just trying to write from my heart and my own experiences and my exact weird sense of humor, which I don't even know how to explain. You'll see if you come tomorrow at 6:20 to this theater. But yeah, I think I wrote it for myself, and so I think that's a good lesson, is just like write the movie that you want to see exist in the world that doesn't exist yet, and write something that's personal and funny to you. And I think the more specific you can be about your own life and experiences. I mean, the film's set in Burlington, Ontario, which is where I grew up in the early 2000s. The more it seems to be relating to people, because we sold out all their screenings at TIFF within the first 20 seconds of tickets being accessible online. It seems like people of all ages are really relating to it, which is shocking to me. Like, there's a teenager kind of filmmaking committee at TIFF called TIFF Next Wave, which is really cool, and there are all these very cool and very terrifying like high school students that have their own film festival within TIFF, and they selected it as one of the films that they loved this year, and presented a screening with me, and then it also at the premiere, my mom was in the audience, but also like people my own age and stuff, and it just seemed like it was connecting with everyone, which is so surprising because it's just such a weird idiosyncratic film, literally just about me. So I think, yeah, I'm very shocked, but I think it's because I just tried to be like as honest and go through the darkest memories of my life and what I was like as a teenager, and really kind of plunge those depths, I guess.
I want to ask a question, but I don't want it to seem like a dick move.
Now you have to ask it.
Because I think if someone asked me this question, I would get annoyed, and I don't want to be annoying or disrespectful, but I am curious. So, okay, I'm asking this from the perspective of I wrote a film that was not based on a true story, but the main character is like loosely based on me as a teenager in many ways. I thought a lot about how much should she be like me? Should she look like me or whatever? So in your case, the protagonist is male,
A teenage boy, yeah.
teenage boy. So did you ever think about, was that a consideration? Or was it always a teenage boy? Was it ever a teenage girl or ethnicity different? or
Yeah,
anything?
that's a great, not a dick question, very respectful, and I've actually gotten it a lot. so-
Disagree.
I'm also not. The reason why I would be annoyed if I was asked that question is because I get my back up a little bit when some people say, like, you're a female, you should write female protagonists. And if you don't, then you're not being a feminist or something. And
Yeah.
I don't agree with that. I think you can write. Anyway, I'll let you answer.
Yeah, well, when I was applying to telefilm, someone literally said that they're like, "Why are you making a film about a young boy? Like, there's so many young boys on."
Okay, so that's
camera,
a
like-
dicker move way of asking the question. Okay.
They're like, "You don't." They're like, "I don't." You'd be easier for you to get the funding if it was a woman. Like, why don't you just make it a girl? And I was like, "Well, I don't know. I'm not interested in that." And also, I think there's a really interesting gap in representation right now, which is like films made by women that are actually telling stories about young men and maybe showing them at a different angle than they can see themselves. And I've seen a lot of coming of age films made by men that star men, and I feel like I was like almost poisoned in a weird way watching those movies to think that I feel like if this movie is made by a man, he would get into the NYU and he would like lose his virginity to his boss in the back of the video store, and everyone would do like a slow clap, standing ovation when he screens his film for the school. And I think these films have really poisoned us, and it's kind of what's caused like some toxic masculinity. Like, and if you grow up believing that you can read yourself into every story as the hero and that all of popular culture is for you, then maybe that creates like bad messages. Especially for men that are already susceptible to like loving cinema and getting addicted to it, which is kind of what my film is about, is sort of like this idea of like a teenage film bro that can't relate to other people and only can relate to movies. And the movie like slightly allows him to kind of see eventually that other people exist, which will hopefully allow him to like actually be a good human in the end. So yeah, I mean that's what I was interested in. I think if it was a woman and it'd be a young girl, like I think the Lady Bird comparisons would never stop. But also I don't know, I just wanted to write this weird creepy 16-year-old boy that masturbates to Spartacus DVDs, and yeah, that's what I was into.
I mean, we've heard so much about the male gaze and men telling everyone's story, like straight white cis men telling every version of everyone else's story out there. So it's interesting to have like the female gaze telling.
Yeah, directed at a
boy
young
story.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, how do you feel about me telling your story, Kevin? Is it okay?
I feel great. I don't know. I'm not a straight male, so it doesn't really reflect my life.
Yeah, well.
Oh, is this supposed to talk?
No, you don't have to say
I
anything.
think that you're right, because I think a female approach is very different from a straight white dude's approach, because every like upper crust New England literature major writes a book about what it's like to be an upper crust New England literature major, and there's not a lot of new ground being covered or any new angles being taken. So yeah, I would prefer that women write all the straight men roles till the end of time. Get Phoebe Waller-Bridge doing more than Indiana Jones. Or no, James Bond. She's in Indiana Jones.
I think there's also like a secret thing that if you reverse the gender of your main character, you can actually be more truthful about yourself. And then people are like, "Oh, it's just so interesting." And you're like, "No, they're like, "Wow, your main character is such a dick." You're like, "I know, it's just so hard. He's like that, not me."
Yeah, it's a distance that you can like shield yourself on.
Yeah. Well, I've done that before where I'll write male protagonist and then I'm like, should I switch? And I've switched. I'm like, maybe it should be, or I've switched genders. And I don't know why. It's an interesting exercise to see how different it is if I just switch the gender, but I've already written the script.
I mean, I think the other character is like a woman in her 30s, so in a weird way, I feel like it's just a split thing where it's kind of my 16-year-old self talking to my 35-year-old self, and sort of that relationship. It's kind of like a weird Freudian exercise for me writing the script.
And then gender is on a spectrum too. So we're talking about very male, female, but there's all kinds of, So it's an interesting, that was a really interesting answer to that. And I was just thinking about it now, and I didn't give you the heads up I was going to ask you, but I'm glad that
What a
I didn't
dick
come off
move.
like a dick. I did want to ask all of you if you did anyone do an audience test screening or anything at any stage? Kevin, maybe I'll start with you.
I did not. I just edited it till it was
Zero
done.
notes over here.
And
It's
I was
like unheard
if
of.
anyone doesn't like it, tough.
Right.
I spent so much time. I don't want to hear anything.
Right.
Oh, you didn't show it to anyone for feedback or anything?
Nope.
Kevin.
No.
It's like an astonishing thing to do.
I did it
It's
till it
kinda
worked.
punk rock though.
I
Like,
did
I'm
it till
kind
it
of
worked for
impressed.
me, and then it was like, I can't. If anyone says anything, I'll just break into a million pieces and die.
So it was more about like you were feeling fragile and you're like, I can't take notes. Here's the movie. It's done.
I just, with everything in life, I did it until I felt like I wasn't cringing while watching it, and then I'm like, this is the exact perfect tone, and that's it. That scene's done, and then I moved on. But I couldn't.
Do you feel like you're your own like worst critic? Like,
I just, when I would watch shorts back, there'd always be these little moments where I'd be like, oh, or like, but I didn't kind of have the resources to go back and like fix anything on this. So I was just like, it's like when you have a oneer and you're trying to like, I edited a short that was all oneers and it was all improvised, as some people in this audience might know. And so I kind of had to take like a 10-minute scene and jump cut till it was a sensible 3-minute scene. Don't get offended. The person's film that it is here. But I just knew what I had at my disposal, and I did it until I didn't feel embarrassed to show it to anyone, but there just wasn't like, I couldn't scream to me like, yes, I'll go back and change it because there is no other footage. That's it.
So my earlier question about who did you make the film for, you really made it for you.
That's right.
I respect that. Like,
If it never played a single film fest, I would just watch it in
You
my house
watching
being
it in your
like,
house.
bravo, you did it, man. Yeah.
It's true. It's hard enough to make a movie, so just having one made is, you should be proud.
I know that sounds insane. We will be testing the next one, which is like, feels like a real.
Telefilm's not going to let you
Okay, great.
let that happen.
Yeah.
What about you, Tara? Did you have get notes at any stage?
Kind of. Because I was editing for the first time, I had Anna McLean, who edited Compulsus, as like an editing consultant, less of a notes consultant, but just like, did I break any rules here, like that I don't know about? And then Nicole Steves, who was my producer, I was like, what is this? What is this? Like, what do you think? So no, like, just a couple people to make sure it wasn't embarrassing.
What was your?
oh yeah, I showed it to
Experience
so many people. Anti-Kevin approach.
Ugh.
Yeah, I mean, in the script phase, I started writing the script in October 2018, and then I shot in the spring of 2021. So I spent about 3 years, writing and rewriting the scripts. I did a table read, which I really recommend doing, especially for comedy. So I had like maybe like a year in, once I had a draft that I was kind of into, I cast actors and got them to read the script out loud and got my friend to read the stage directions, and I just sat in the corner like terrified and heard the whole script out loud with a kind of an audience of friends, like maybe 10, 15 people. And then we did a notes session afterwards. So that was amazing because especially for comedy, I think it's so essential to kind of hear how jokes are landing in a room, and you sort of feel it and you feel the comic beats, and you can sort of instantly tell what's working and what isn't. So I do that with everything I write, and I find that really invaluable. You just have to it's the scariest thing you'll ever do, but it's really important. So then I got, I rewrote it after that, and I got more feedback from friends. And, once the actors came on, they had, feedback too, which was really helpful as well. And then we shot it. And then, definitely throughout the process of editing, showed it to friends, and got their feedback. And then there was kind of this weird part where, like, me and my editor, we'd gotten all this really harsh feedback from people, and we're kind of in we were sad, and and my producers were like, the ending doesn't work, and we think that you should, like, write in a scene where, like, he apologizes to his mom in a letter, and we can have voiceover, but we can't afford to shoot any more footage, so you'll just have to figure that out. And I was like, I don't want to do that, and I don't think I should, and I don't believe in that. And I had so then I was like, well, I forced a test screening because I was like, I really believe in the movie and I think it's working. I just don't understand why people don't, like, believe in this the way that I do, my editor and I. And so I had and it was during, like, COVID, so I had like 6 people, and I rented a theater. My friend let me show it, like, in her screening room in her condo, and I had like 6 friends come and watch the movie, and it was the first time I'd watched it with like an actual audience. And everyone gave back such. One of my producers came, and everybody gave back such positive, insightful feedback. And I was like, "What do you think about the ending? Should there be a scene where he apologizes to his mom in voiceover?" And they're like, "No, that's a terrible idea." And it was just like so like legitimizing. And it was the first time that I was like, "Wow, this film! Like, I think that this film actually could work. You know, I think this movie has like it's resonating with these people." And it was the first time that the audience in that test screening, they weren't talking about like the flaws or the production issues. They were just talking about the story. And I think that was so important to me as a writer and a director. Like, I really needed that at that moment, to just have people like invested in what the film was actually about, as opposed to the things that were wrong with it, technically or monetarily or something. So yeah, and then we spent another maybe 6 months cutting it after that and getting more feedback from people, until I think you just eventually reach a point where you're like, this is the film, like, for better or for worse. I can't keep cutting this and recutting it. Like, it is what it is, and you just have to kind of release it into the world.
I think this helps explain why you debuted at TIFF, and my first festival was based on a cold medicine high.
No. But, I think, I also, like, I'm an obsessive person, so I think, I spent, like, 4.5 years working on the film, which is, crazy. Like, the half of my 30s are gone.
For the table read, you had actors, but those weren't the actors that you'd cast yet, or were they?
No, they weren't, but they were actors that maybe one or two of them ended up being in the film. The lead actor who did the table read, he plays Matt, but he was reading Lawrence in that first reading.
Were you worried that, like, if you got them to do the table read, you'd feel obligated to, like?
I did feel a little bit of that, and
I would be nervous.
Some of them
'cause I'd be
audition.
like, you're
yeah,
maybe not going to be in the movie, but will you
Yeah.
do the table read?
they're cool about it. Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
I did a table read of Lakeview. Well, Steph was in it at the Halifax Fringe. So it was actually a public performance at
This is a film that has not been
down
yet,
at the
but
Neptune
Tara
Junior.
wrote.
Yeah, it was this weird circumstance that the Fringe director was like, I have $1,200. I'm like, great, I have 11 parts, and then the equity fees were $140, so I lost $40 on the whole thing. But yeah, we did this live reading, and it is a comedy. So to your point, like, it was hitting really, really, really hard, and it was such a validating experience. But I've had a number of actors over the past year been like, what's going on with Lakeview? When are we shooting that?
Does this mean I won't be the narrator?
So people
Or
will maybe
they'll
assume that
say,
they're in the movie.
they'll be like, who's in and who's out? And I'm like, I'm not telling any of you because it's not real and it's not worth it until it's real.
Right.
Yeah.
Once you get the funding to make it, and
Yeah.
you know you're moving forward. Then
There's
you
no
have to have all
need
the
to
awkward
ruin any
conversations.
relationships.
To further explain to Chandler, I read the stage directions.
Oh yeah, congratulations.
I don't
He
get
was
the.
very funny.
I don't think they're gonna keep me around.
Okay, let's take some questions. Does anyone have any questions for any of our wonderful panelists? Right here.
Yeah.
One of those jokes that's like funny and then not funny and then funny again. Before you answer, just because the camera's not picking up, I'm going to sort of repeat the question so
Okay,
that
sure.
people watching can. But that was sort of a. Well, you're asking about a specific moment of. Deciding. Yeah, I'll just let you answer. I'm not going to repeat the whole thing. But yeah, good question. Go ahead.
So there's a scene in the film where it's Rebecca Falvey, Liam Fair, and Ian McLeod are standing in my dining room, and this whole kind of convoluted thing has happened where they've ended up at this person's house, and Rebecca kind of assumes one thing, and Ian is like, no, that's not the case, and so then, just because just in terms of writing it, like, I wasn't sure how to end it, and then when we were filming it, I was like, you should all shrug, but then I was like, I just flashed back to that Cape Fear Simpsons episode where he keeps stepping on the rakes. And I was like, just keep shrugging for like a full 2 minutes. And so they were all like if you watch it really closely, you can see Liam Ferris start to laugh. But luckily, Rebecca and Ian are too busy shrugging for you to really pay attention. But I had another scene where I did the same thing where Riley writes something very biting on a music review site, and he just keeps nodding. I was like, just keep nodding for like a full minute and a half. And he's like, okay. But it also kind of was that thing where I'm like, it's nice to just have a moment where there's no dialogue, which is also absurd. But you can't go overboard. So I think I only have those two. But that was kind of a in the moments decision, and we did like 2 takes of it, and one didn't work at all, and one totally did. So I don't know, just the muse speaking to me.
Let's take another question. Oh, right here.
Yes. What comes more naturally to you? Challenging themes like the ones you were discussing yesterday, or comedy?
Tara has been on 2 panels this week. Yesterday was talking about
COVID's been taking people out.
themes in films that are challenging to sort of work with and direct, and today's about comedy.
Yeah, I think actually comedy. I feel I am pretty funny, but I'm also deeply sad. So they go hand in hand. So I think comedy more naturally, and Compulsus is actually an outlier of a film. Like I have 3 things moving forward, and they're all like romantic comedies or they're all just relationship films. So it's more like about comedy and then humanity. So the challenging thing, I did my one challenging movie. That'll be it. Thank you for asking.
Can you imagine having subtitles in another language?
Oh, which language would you like? I can ask somebody.
I don't say that I wanted it. No, the example I was thinking of, I did a master thesis and I translated a book from Hungarian to French.
Right.
And the author was, it's a humor. It's very difficult to translate humor.
Yeah.
So this whole story is about the memories of a high school student, and it was made into a film when I was 12 years old, and I was in the film.
Oh wow.
It came full circle when my professor suggested I should take a Hungarian author and translate it
Wow.
into French, and I took the same book.
Wow, it's amazing. But yeah, the humor is so different in every culture.
It's very difficult.
Yeah.
I must say. And you don't get the same feeling if you read it in another language.
For sure.
So not only just translating the words and whether or not the jokes are the same wording, but just cultural references might not be the same or something. Yeah. Yeah, that is true. That would be tricky. Does anyone have any experience with comedy in any other languages with subtitles? No. Me either.
I think about it a lot when people say because reasons, and if you translated that into some other language, I don't know that kind of thing that people do where those
Yeah.
weird idiosyncrasies of the English language that are like slang would translate or make any sense, because I've been on Duolingo learning French for 2 years, and I'm just like, man, I would not understand anything that culturally people would know in France.
That's a good point. Right. Lost in translation, yeah. I will take another question. Thank you very much for that. I'll take another question over here. Yeah. Yeah. How many takes does everyone do?
That's such a good question. I feel like it depends on the actor. Like some actors don't want to do a lot of takes because they get burnt out. And some actors are better like on the first take, and some actors, they're like ready to go and they actually, get kind of exhausted if you do too many. And then some actors, they need like 3-4 takes to kind of warm up. So it's kind of like reading the performer, and, like my lead actor was incredible, but sometimes he'd be like really big. And then my job as a director was kind of to eventually on different takes I'd be like, okay, smaller, almost dead, do it like a robot, do nothing. I think it just depends. And then I think sometimes also I would have specific like line readings in my head, and I know actors don't like that. You could speak to that as an actor too. Like, is it annoying when a director's like gives you like an intonation or an inflection?
I just learned that you're not supposed to do that after having done it.
I don't act very much. I've only acted like in one or two things, but it's certainly something that, as a director, I try not to do. But boy, I do it by mistake sometimes.
Yeah, me too.
Well, it's faster. It's like, listen, I love actors, and I can see one of them that was in my movie. But it's like, you do know what you want it to be, and then if you say it like I would do it, and then they wouldn't do it, and then later I learned that you're not supposed to do it. But so then you have to invent this way to talk around it to trick them into doing it when it's like, no, just imitate me, just this one time.
Yeah.
So it's part of the learning process.
I think like I wish I had the luxury of being like David Fincher and doing like 50 takes, per scene on like a close up, but my AD was like ready to murder me if I did like 4 takes. So, I think it also just depends on the scheduling, like of how much time you have to have a scene. And if you have a really long dialogue driven scene and you have to get, close up on everybody and, wide shot and medium shot and maybe an insert and the coverage of the scene, the way you're doing it, like you don't actually have that much time to do that many takes because you won't be able to get enough coverage. You don't want to like be in a risk of position where you've shot a scene and all you have is like a wide shot and like half of the cast's close-ups or something, because then you'll be a nightmare cutting stuff out. I think what I learned was just, I really like kind of setting the performance in the wide shot so that like the tone and everything is like in place, and I feel like good about the way the scene's playing out in the wide, and then going into the close-ups, but people don't like that on set because then they're like, you'll never use the wide, which is true. In when you actually go into the edit, you're going to only go to the wide like maybe a few times, but you'll be in the close-ups forever. And if you waste a bunch of time doing like 6 takes of a wide shot, I don't know if this is interesting or not, but
I find it interesting.
I do too. They asked about takes.
Okay.
Here we go.
Then by the time you get to the close-ups, which are really crucial to the scene, then you've already like, you won't have enough time to shoot properly the performance. So it's hard. I mean, I really love doing rehearsal. I wish I had more time to do that. I love like, if I could have access to actors like 2 or 3 weeks or a month in advance and just kind of work out all the scenes and the blocking ahead of time. That's like, I love treating like shooting a film like a play almost, where you're sort of getting it up on its feet and working through all the motivations and blocking and dialogue ahead of time, so that, because once you're on set and you're shooting, you don't have any time to be like, why did you open the door today? Or like, where are you coming from? Like, you just have to be shooting. So I guess that's the tricky time, is like finding that balance of still making your day and being kind of like a friendly asset on set and being really on the ball, but then having flexibility to like try different things, because that's also really interesting. And it's nice to kind of almost think in contrasting tones. Like if one actor's really excited and the other actor's like kind of indifferent, maybe that's funnier, or maybe that adds like a comedic element to the scene, that you don't want people that are like at the same level, like agreeing with each other all the time, because like comedy is about like conflict and contrast and difference.
My number one goal is performance, so I want the actors to get as much as they want. But unfortunately, the way the system is set up is like, we're going to spend 45 minutes moving a light 4%. And 4% and 4%, and then we're like, all right, let's go, and you get 3, and that's bullshit, and I hate it. So like, that's something that I'm trying to consider on the next film too, is like, how do we make a shoot that's nimble and that doesn't require a ton of lighting, and that we can available light. Oh my God, we can move, but just like something that's more amenable to the acting process, because it's the most important part. And so I would always say, if you need an extra take, ask for it. I wouldn't necessarily use it, but if they picked a favorite, I would tell the script supervisor to write it down. But I also have this thing where I'm like, am I annoying them by making them do it 5 times? Like, is it worth their time? Because to your point to the wide, you won't use it, but you need the whole thing because you don't know where you're going to cut it. So to me, I'm like, if they run through the wide 5 times, then they're going to know it when we move in. Like
yeah,
the
that's kind of how
dialogue
I feel
secondhand.
too.
Yeah.
But Yeah, I don't know. And then sometimes when you're really like strapped for time, you have to do these insane mental calculations in your mind where you're like, okay, we'll only get your close-up from like the first 3 lines you have and the last 2 lines. And then it feels like inorganic. And I know like directing television is supposed to be really like that. But I think the more you can just make your shoot, like the camera can go anywhere, the actors can go anywhere. The light is just a uniform light that, so you're not like moving stands in and out, or you don't have to reset like you're saying a million times. That's kind of what helps it become the most like performance oriented.
When I was younger, I'd be like, if I ever make a feature, I'm going to make it like Friday Night Lights, the TV show. 3 cameras. No. You get one.
I find making actors do a million takes is a great way to get revenge on all the really attractive people that were mean to you in high school. Just kidding. I do it till I think I've got it, and then we do one more.
You don't do a lot.
No,
That I saw.
Because I always see one where I'm like, oh, that's it. And I'm like, then let's do one more, because whenever I look at the that's it take on my laptop screen, there's like, you know, a bird pooping on the window, or like the audio cuts out.
Yeah.
So
It's always hard to, because like I would find myself being like, one more, just like that. And they're like, what? What is that direction? Like, if we have to do one more, but you want me to do it the same. But it's like you feel like, oh, now we're really in the pocket. So if we do another one, then it's going to even be better because they're like so in the zone. But it's weird because it's this sort of organic thing that you, like
yeah,
every
you
take
get a
is
feel
different.
for when it's hitting that thing.
Making movies is fun and weird.
It's a bizarre profession.
There's a question over here.
Hey, Anna. I didn't realize you were there when I was talking about you.
She said nice things. Thank goodness. you
Yeah, I
said
thought it was
nice
so
things.
rude.
No, I just want to know about setting the tone for the whole set, and if there's anything that you really focus on, or anything unconventional or conventional that you do to make sure that people are feeling safe to take those comedic risks on camera.
How do you set the tone on set to make everybody feel safe to take the risks?
Do you mean cast and crew or?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, I think what people forget is that everything you do is making the movie. Like the first time you email someone is making the movie. The first time you have a coffee with someone to talk about the project is making the movie. Like it's not just when you go on first day of production. And so like the more I think you can have actors like meet each other and hang out without you, or I would make playlists for everyone, sort of character playlists, you know, with songs that like tracked their emotional journey. I think it's really nice if you can get the actors to kind of take creative agency, like in other elements that aren't just their characters. So like, you know, do it, make sure they have a costume fitting without you as the director, and then get them to choose their clothes. And then you can come in and sort of monitor it and be like, ooh, I really like that. But like, if they can kind of step into the shoes of the character and start making creative choices without you, I think it gives them more ownership over their character. Same with like production design almost. Like, what do you think his room would look like? What kind of posters does he have on the walls? And like some actors don't want to do that because they're shooting like Murdoch Mysteries and they're unavailable. But the actors that like I fall in love with are the ones that like get really into that and are excited about kind of shaping the, you know, creative elements like with you. And that to me is really fun and exciting. And I think the same goes with like introducing them to other crew members. Like if you can do a rehearsal and have your cinematographer be present, you know, because then you can sort of do the rehearsal, but then also have the cinematographer watch it. And then maybe they start getting ideas about like blocking or how they want to shoot it, you know, or make sure the cinematographer comes with you to the location scout and just like try to involve everybody as much like holistically beforehand. You know, and I don't know, my films come from such a personal place that I was always like, here's a bunch of pictures of me in my yearbook, and like, these are inspirations. Like, I was trying to take as much like real world stuff from my own life and sort of give it to people to have access to, because I think that's like the joy for me of filmmaking is just like really getting immersed in this story and this world that you're all building together.
Because I was I was making everyone work for no money and then almost no money. I was almost comically accommodating. Like if someone's like, you know, I'm saying this one line, but I'd really like to punch you in the face. I'd be like, please do. I just don't want you to leave. But actually,
So that's how you made everyone feel comfortable.
Yeah,
Being
it's like
over the top accommodation.
just physical abuse.
For you're receiving, not giving.
Yeah. Yeah, just always inward. I love actors. I write for actors. All of my scripts are written with the actors in mind beforehand. So I always want them to feel good and feel like they have a cool moment or a cool line. It's like my one guiding principle is there's like, no one is just like, here's your coffee, sir. It's like, I was late to work and then my baby pooped on me and then I had to come here and give you this coffee, so I apologize. Like, it's always, everybody's just got that one thing to like kind of hang their hat on. And I find people respond really well to that. And I don't know. I'm just a real doormat, so.
For Burn Book, I had established relationships with everybody because they all came off COMPULSUS, which is where I met most of them. So it's just about hiring the right people that you know are good vibes, and you can have a nice chill day because you've also it is not a feature film where you're up against it. You're like, no, I specifically designed this to fit within an 8-hour shoot day with lunch. There's donuts at the front. Everyone's cool. Like, it was chill. So I think, and the idea, and just be nice to people. Like, I think the film set hierarchy is kind of like being phased out. There still has to be one because someone has to run the show, but you don't need to be a dick. And I think, and we had a no dick policy on not having a dick, but like, don't be an asshole policy on COMPULSUS. And I just think it's a good rule for life. It's like, it's not going to get you anywhere. And certainly, like, no one's out here doing this for their health, you know, like they're especially in the short film, it's like they are here to help me taking a pay cut on a Monday where it's -20. They don't need to be here. So
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say, was just respect for everyone.
that's what I was trying to say.
let them in. Finish this point for you,
Just
Tara.
be nice.
Yeah, that is important to be nice.
And just one more thing, and just be open to ideas. Like, I think people feel part of a team when you allow them to be part of a team. So if you just take ideas, and if you don't like an idea, you just need to be nice about the way you reject it.
Exactly. Be nice, everybody. Maybe we'll take one more question and then we'll wrap it up. If there is one more question. If not, then right here. I was actually going to do that at the end, so we'll do that now. I'll get everyone to just one more time to say who you are. Tell us again what your film is and if it's playing, where they can see it right now or anytime soon.
Hello.
This one has quite the string of screenings coming up across the nation.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, hi, I'm Chandler Levack. My film's called I Like Movies, and it's playing tomorrow at 6:20 in this theater. Not this one. I don't know which theater it is, but here.
Like here at somewhere
in this, Cineplex.
Park Lane.
And it premiered last week at TIFF, and it's going to play in Calgary next, Vancouver Film Festival, St. John's Women's Film Festival, which is really exciting. I've never been to Newfoundland before, so it's the opening night gala there. And Pop Montreal. And tell your friends.
And you're available, like you have social media around.
Oh yeah,
movies, so
I'm C Levack, Levack on Instagram. So slide into my DMs.
And Tara, what about you?
My film's called The Burn Book Tour. You can stream it and my feature COMPULSUS through this festival until Thursday. And if I know Eventive's rules, as I do, you should be able to unlock it on Thursday, but watch it till Saturday. You should have 48 hours.
Mm-hmm. So you have a short film, The Burnt Book Tour, that's a comedy, and also have a feature film called COMPULSUS,
Yes.
which is not a comedy.
Not at all.
Lesbian vigilante movie. Is that what you called it?
That's right.
Okay.
And your name is Tara Thorne.
Oh, yeah, Tara Thorne.
And my name is Kevin Hartford. I wrote and directed Lemon Squeezy, which is playing tomorrow night at 9:30. It is the very last film of the entire festival.
Do you have it? Okay. Right,
And the next place it's playing is Indianapolis LGBT
cool.
Film
Anyone happens
Fest.
to be there, catch it
If
up
anyone's in
there.
Indianapolis, which it's like, I feel like the chances are good. Many of us will be.
And you can find you on social media and YouTube, Tara.
Yes,
about, like,
I'm
what your films are doing
at
and
the
all
Kevin
that.
Hartford.
Thorny HFX.
Thank you all for coming in and having this awesome.
Thank you, Steph.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Babe.
much.
Thank you all
Thanks,
for
Greg.
joining us. Have a great rest of your festival.